Hey investor friends, I'm Michelle Markey, and today I'm going to be covering one of my favorite books for investing called Invested by Danielle Town and Phil Town. And I briefly talked about this book in one of my videos about life-changing investing books. And this book came out in 2018 where daughter and father Danielle and Phil were inspired to write this book from their podcast that originally came out in 2015 and which I discovered in 2017. So I was super grateful that they came out with a written manuscript of all the things they talked about in their podcast, and I've derived a lot of important lessons from this book. And since it's still the beginning of 2021 and January specifically, I figured I'd cover the beginning part, the intro, and the chapter 1, January Becoming Brave, where Danielle talks about how this should be something to integrate into your life like a practice of exercise or like practicing yoga. So I'm super excited to talk about what I got out of these books and how I apply the lessons learned to my own investing practice. And I hope you'll be able to do the same on your journey towards financial freedom. And if you're also on the pursuit of happiness and financial freedom, I'd love if you could please like and subscribe, because I believe we're trying to develop the kinds of skills and habits to become successful investors like people we admire, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Danielle and Phil Town. So I'd be super appreciative. Thanks. I think a lot of us are like fellow millennial Danielle Town, and we can relate to her struggle, and we all have our own life struggles, but something that I think we're all worried about is money and having enough of it so that we can not only live a decent life, but also not have to constantly worry, and so that we're able to have options in life and be able to do fun things and also be able to help our family and friends and causes we care about. And it can be overwhelming trying to figure out what we should do with our money and how we should be investing. And I personally felt a little bit stuck with this idea back in 2017. I was invested, like a lot of people are, in index funds and some stocks, but I was questioning whether that was really a good way to go and whether there was something more that I could be doing, as I still didn't feel like I was really on the path towards financial freedom back then. And I was listening to a bunch of different podcasts, and in discovering the Invested podcast, I felt like it opened up a world to me and allowed me to realize a form of investing that I really took to, similar to Phil Town took to investing the way that Buffett and Munger do. And in this way, I thought that was really helpful to me to have a plan of action and an approach that is also solidified in specific details in this book that I think is very useful for everyone. And this is one of the reasons why I really encourage my friends and family and anyone who will listen to check it out and try it for yourself to see if it's something that makes sense to you. And I happen to think that it's very cool that Phil Town and Danielle have really figured out the way that Buffett and Munger invest, even though they've never really spelled out their specific recipe to how you should invest in businesses. By following this book, it provides a lot of resources and valuation methods and stories so that we get a feel for how we can make investing our own practice. I love how Danielle and Phil Town in their intros talk about how we should think about investing like we're voting with our personal money, and they reflect our personal values and the companies whose missions we can believe in and which companies we think we can buy at a discount to their intrinsic business value. And I know that might sound kind of jargony, but basically, like Phil talks about in his intro, it's like when Warren Buffett buys a company that's worth $10 for $5. And I like how Danielle goes deeper into this concept of voting with money, because we vote for companies that we want to have in our lives and into the future by investing our money into them. Let's say I were to invest in Starbucks. It shows that I like coffee and I believe in Starbucks providing more coffee into my future, and I like their mission of providing healthcare and a good work environment for their baristas. So in that sense, if you can find a company whose mission and values you believe in, it makes it worthwhile to invest your money so that you and that company can both thrive financially. I think many of us, myself included, can relate to how Danielle did all the right things as a young person. She got her schooling and she got a good career and she was making money, but then she was finding herself overworking and burning out and on the work treadmill where she was a wage slave, and it led to her having health effects. And I don't think that that's fun for any of us to not have a work-life balance. And she was trying to find another way in her mid-30s, like many of her friends. And she finally turned to her successful investor father, Phil, who started opening that world of investing to Danielle. And she decided to volunteer herself to be a guinea pig of trying to be mentored by him, when before she was a little resistant to that. And I definitely relate to how she had fear about learning to invest. Although myself, I don't typically feel like I have fear when it comes to much of anything. Like, I'm the type who enjoys skydiving or bungee jumping and snowboarding in double black diamond ski trails. And although it's a little different when you're faced with the prospect of losing money, where even if you're just saving your money in a bank account, you're still losing money because inflation is eating away the value or the purchasing power of that money every day, since interest rates are at rock bottom amounts. So that way, I appreciate how Danielle talks us through a lot of her fears and how she overcame them. I like the concept of living in one's dharma, or what someone is meant to do in life. And this is what Danielle felt like she wasn't able to do when she was on that lawyer work treadmill. And she realized that she has to do something else. And she goes back and forth with her father in the first chapter. And I really enjoy that interchange because it's so fun to think about multiple sides of people's feelings and attitudes towards investing. And she once asked her father, "You like high-risk situations and being on the edge," and she equated that with investing. And he said, not at all. He likes to know exactly what he's doing, which is very interesting because a lot of people think of investing as high risk, but Phil likes to encourage us, as long as we do our homework and we do the right calculations, we read 10K annual reports, we learn as much as we can about the management and know a lot about the subject in which a company is doing business, and really truly study a business to determine whether it's a good investment or not. That allows us to have certainty so that when we are investing, it doesn't mean that we're taking excess risks. It actually means that we think that it will be a really good investment and that we reduce our risk by knowing what we're doing. So in that way, I think Danielle is now able to live her dharma. And I actually relate to that too, because I feel like in becoming an investor was what I was meant to become in life. And it truly feels like one of my calling. Like, I'm sure Danielle and Phil feel that way too, and like Buffett and Munger do. So I'm super excited to be part of this journey with you all. I love how Phil and Danielle are critical of the common financial services industry, or what Danielle calls the financial industrial complex, that says to just save your money and hoard it, and or abdicate your decision making to a financial advisor and essentially diversify and hold a bunch of funds. And I actually appreciate how they give us straight talk about how that's not really going to necessarily lead us to having the financial peace of mind that we're looking for and having the kinds of financially free options I think a lot of us crave. And so I agree with them, because it kind of felt like if I'm just going to settle for mediocre investment returns in some index fund, I feel like I can do better. And I could be wrong, but at least I'm going to try. And like I talked about earlier with inflation, it's sort of pointless just saving in a bank account or buying some bonds, because interest rates are super low right now in 2021. So unless that were to change and we see a comeback of the 1980s, I kind of feel like in learning how to invest is one of our few choices that we have to truly grow our money and not feel like we have to try to trust someone else with our money. Like, we really need to grab the Wall Street bull by the horns and figure it out for ourselves if we want to have a chance at achieving financial freedom. And I also feel critical about financial advisors, because although they say they have a fiduciary duty to make money for you, at the same time, it makes you want to ask, what is their track record? And have they made money themselves, or are they just floating along like everybody else in the big sea of the stock market in a bunch of funds? So you have to really ask, if you're going to trust someone else with your money, what is their track record? And do you believe that they will be able to make you money just as they would be able to make themselves money? And I pay attention to how Warren Buffett set up his fund back in the day in the 60s, where he invested his money and treated his partner's money the same way he treated his own money. And he didn't gain unless his partners gained. So I really like how they come at this approach of investing. Phil captures the moral of chapter 1 by saying, being broke can make you brave. And for Danielle, that meant she needed to overcome her feeling of enclosed concrete stairwell fear that enabled her to see past the idea that you can lose money. Sure, we can all lose money investing, but she started developing a mindset and an approach so that she could embrace investing. And I'd like to believe I'd do the same. And she encourages us at the end of chapter 1 to write down and brainstorm what we would do if we had financial freedom. And I'd do things like travel more, invest in real estate, help out my family, and also just work from anywhere in the world, because I think that'd be kind of fun to travel around and work from anywhere, as a lot of us are working from home during the coronavirus pandemic. And I think by learning how to invest and continuing to practice investing, we will build our confidence so that we can eventually become successful investors, whether that happens in the 12 months plan like this book lays out from January through December, or throughout our lives, that hopefully we'll eventually make it. So if you enjoyed this video or learned something, please like and subscribe. And I'd love to hear from you in a comment about what you would do if you had financial freedom. Till next time.